Hi everyone, and today I'm going to be discussing with you the importance of school-home communication during the pandemic that turned home into school. During this presentation, I'm going to give you a little introduction, talk about the purpose of the study, go over some literature, review my methods that I used for my research, go through the results, discuss the conclusion, share my references, and at the end there'll be some time for some questions. So what is parental involvement exactly for the purposes of this study? So for this study, parental involvement was considered anything that parents do with their student at home or with the school. We found, and previous research had shown, that there were three different types: home-based, school-based, and technology-based. Home-based was anything that the parents were doing at home with their student. So this could include them just asking them about their day or helping with homework. School-based is anything that the parents do in the school. So this could be helping with class parties, being involved in the PSTA, or even going on field trips. Lastly, there was technology-based. This was anything that the parents did using technology to stay involved. So this could include talking to the child's teacher through Class Dojo or just simply sending them an email. So what is distance learning? Distance learning is when students are using technology or packets of worksheets to complete their schoolwork from a remote location. Parents assume the role of teacher, and this occurred when schools closed because of the COVID-19 outbreak. So the purpose of my study was to find out how parents were involved in their child's schooling before schools closed, to find out how parents were involved in their child's schooling during distance learning, to understand the parents' experiences with distance learning, and to learn about the importance of teacher communication. So the four main research questions that I used were: how were parents involved in their child's schooling before and during distance learning? What were the parents' experiences with distance learning? What was communication with teachers like before and during distance learning? How important was teacher communication before and during distance learning? So the importance. During distance learning, teacher communication is more important than ever. Parents need to be kept in the loop. Teachers need to let parents know the expectations. The beginning of the new school year began with distance learning for many schools, and most school districts across the country are still doing some version of distance learning. Teachers need to learn from this experience because it may be part of regular schooling for who knows how long. So some previous research that was done by Parks and Holloway found that for all ethnic groups, a welcoming and informative school contributed to parent satisfaction, meaning that if the parents perceived the environment as welcoming, they were likely to be involved in the school. Another study in 2006 found that the effort teachers made to establish and maintain teacher-parent relationships led to positive outcomes in children's school performance. Another study in 2017 found that greater parent involvement in their child's education was associated with parent satisfaction with their child's teacher and how school staff interacted with parents. The researchers suggest that parent satisfaction in these areas likely led to their willingness to be involved in their child's school. Another study in 1999 found that teachers did not know about many activities that parents did with their children outside of school, such as helping their children with projects and taking them to cultural events. Teachers didn't know about any extracurricular involvement of over 1/4 of parents. Teachers knew very little about the school-based involvement of about 1/3 of the parents. Amistad in 2013 found that technology could promote parent-teacher communication and parent involvement. So some things that emerged in this study was using phone messaging systems, email, websites, and social media to keep in touch. Teachers and parents both felt teachers could keep parents informed through technology, and if they did keep them informed, it would allow parents to be more involved in their child's schooling. So how I went about this research was I first obtained IRB approval. I then planned to interview parents face-to-face about school-home communication, but then schools closed due to COVID-19. So I had to resubmit IRB approval, and I interviewed 6 parents via phone with an additional focus on homeschool communication during distance learning. I then transcribed each interview verbatim, asked follow-up questions when needed. I coded the interviews with Max QDA, and then I identified the themes. So for my 6 participants, the first one was James. He was male, African American, located in South Carolina. He had 2 children, one in 6th and one in 9th grade. Then I interviewed Carrie. She was female. She was Caucasian from South Carolina. She had 2 kids in school, and they were in K4 and 5th. Then there was Keisha, a female African American from North Carolina with 1 child in school who was in 6th grade. There was also Lauren. She was female Caucasian from Tennessee. She had 2 children in school in K5 and 2nd. Lynn was female Caucasian from Ohio with 3 children in school in the 5th, 9th, and 10th grade. Tiara was female Caucasian from Minnesota. She had 2 students in school, and they were in K5 and 11th grade. So I'm going to describe to you the themes that emerged from my interviews, and then give you a couple of direct quotes from participants for each theme. So first we have parental involvement. Participants describe parental involvement as being involved in their children's schooling at home or at school or both. Being involved at home entailed asking children about their day, helping them with homework, and emphasizing the importance of doing well in school. Parents also describe being involved in school through their communications with teachers. All participants said that before schools closed, they were in regular communication with at least one of their children's teachers through phone calls, emails, text messages, or apps. Lauren stated, "I help out a lot with the PTA. Our school does a thing called Happy Cart, where we bring the teachers snacks and things like that, so I helped with that, and the book fair. And then anytime the class had parties, I've helped with some of those special crafts that the teacher needed help with in the classroom." All of my participants acknowledged the teacher's efforts. So at the time that I did the interviews, schools had just shut down with no time for teachers to plan how to transition to distance learning. Most participants acknowledged that the teachers were doing the best they could with distance learning. They also seemed pleased with what the teachers were doing to make distance learning as good as it could be under the circumstances. So some examples that emerged were teachers making their own packets with worksheets, sending Chromebooks home or textbooks home, and also providing parents with tutorials on how to find their children's work and complete it. Lauren stated, "I think both of their teachers have gone above and beyond where they have the online learning, they have the packets, but they also sent home things like scavenger hunts or drawing activities." However, participants also discussed challenges of home instruction, like not receiving special education services, lack of schoolwork. High schoolers were getting only a couple of hours of work every day, and it was mostly review. There was also problems with technology that included internet service. There was too many places to find information, and some of the parents didn't know how to use the technology. Materials being taught differently than when the parents were in school also caused some challenges. Tiara stated, "Our high schooler is only getting an hour like every 3 days. So I'm like, what is going on? It's just weird and strange. It's a strange world we live in. It makes me wonder if our kids really need to go to school all those many hours they're going if they are doing it as quickly as they are doing it at home." Carrie stated, "Math is certainly different than when I was in school. The main issue that I have is that I can't remember everything I learned, and technology has changed so much that I don't know how to help with the way in which they are learning." There was also an emphasis on the importance of maintaining routines at home while the children were participating in distance learning. Some routines were made by the parents and others were created by the school. So some schools did maintain a normal schedule and all classes were online, but some were parent made and they made these routines to help reduce temptation to rush through work to do other activities. Keisha stated, they still have the expectation that the kids will still get their work done because it's still getting graded. Even online, they still want kids to behave like they were at school. Like they have to get dressed every day. They don't want them in their pajamas or in their bed like they actually are in school. So the last theme was the importance of teacher communication. And that although participants were happy with the frequency of their communication with their child's teacher before schools closed, since schools have closed due to COVID-19, there were 2 participants who had not received any communication from their child's teacher. Given the number of unknowns regarding expectations for distance learning, the lack of communication from teachers was surprising to parents. All the participants felt that during this time of distance learning, it was more important than ever for teachers to be in constant communication with their students and parents. Lynn explained it is very difficult to gauge their expectations for the remainder of the year without expressing it directly to parents or even the students. The initial plan was to provide work for the students, but not necessarily record the grades. Now that this at-home learning will take place for a third of the school year, it would be nice to know how this will affect their grades and overall GPAs, as well as understand what material they plan to cover. Tara also stated that communication was very important because we are all like floating out here on an island and we don't know. So overall, my conclusions are most parents are satisfied with the ways teachers communicated with them prior to school closing last spring. The shift to distance learning left many parents feeling as if they were on their own. The importance of communicating with parents when schools closed so abruptly was more important than ever. During the regular school year, it is acceptable to only be in communication with parents when there is something important to share. But when the parents were assuming the role of teacher, the teachers needed to communicate their expectations to parents. With the lack of teacher communication that came to light in this study, the question presents itself as to whether or not these students were going to be ready to move on to the next grade. So my findings also had similarities to previous research. That include Goss 2019 found that parents of older students were still wanted to get communication from parents, and they felt the schools were not sharing important information with them. This was true for Tiara. She was getting communication for her kindergarten child's teacher, but not from her high schoolers' teachers, which she found frustrating. In general, parent involvement declines as students move through the grades, and this was true for my participants. Lynn even stated, I typically don't need to reach out to my child's teacher, especially now that my boys are in high school. So the implications of these findings are communication is more important than ever during distance learning. Teachers must share their expectations so parents can help their child succeed. Schools need to learn from this experience to be more prepared going forward. Some implications for research is in the past, most research on parental involvement and homeschool communication have been from the perspective of the teachers in the schools. More research needs to be done from the parents' perspective. However, with all studies, there are limitations, and my study also included some limitations, including small sample size. There were no parents from very low SES backgrounds who may not be able to help their child at home. No parents were inconvenienced by the school closing. All parents had good relationships with the teachers before the school closing, and there were time limitations. A question that I would like to explore in future research is, did parents who have not heard from teachers not reach out to them because they did not want to add to the teacher's stress? Now it's time for questions.